A story is told about a man many years ago when he ran for a state legislature in his state. He lost, well, miserably. And after that, he found a job again, lost the job. And a year after that, he went to have his own business, but again, he failed in business. 2 years after, he really loved this woman, a beautiful woman whom he believed will be a life partner. But she died. And then 3 years after that, he had a nervous breakdown. And 3 years after, he ran for nomination for Congress. He was defeated. And then 5 years after, although he won eventually, he lost the nomination for Congress. And 2 years after that, he was defeated for nomination for vice president. And 2 years after, again, he was defeated for U.S. Senate. And 2 years after, in 1860, he was elected as the President of the United States of America. And maybe some of you are quite familiar with this story, because if you are driving a Lincoln luxury car, this car is named in his honor, because I am talking about Abraham Lincoln. And on the story of our Holy Mother Church, we all know that we have quite a number of our fathers in the faith, those whom we now call saints, but they didn't have a good start. And actually, in the eyes of the world, they failed miserably. For instance, here is a young man, somewhere there in Italy, many years ago, who was a failure as a soldier because he got sick and his father actually wasn't so proud of him. And then, eventually, he had this enlightenment and had a vocation that he would like to help the church. But then even the church leaders were not so fond of him either. In fact, they questioned his motivation. So he went to the Holy Father and said, "Holy Father, if I am doing something wrong, tell me and tell us, and we will stop." And the Holy Father told him, "Well, in your simplicity and poverty, actually, you put us, the hierarchy, to shame. Go, continue your mission." This man is Saint Francis of Assisi. And until he died, he didn't allow himself to be ordained to the priesthood. Well, he was ordained a deacon so he could preach, but he said he was not worthy. Well, the irony is, his followers, the Franciscans, many of them did not only become priests, they became bishops. And one actually of his eventual followers is a young friar, a seminarian. For in the religious life they called them friars. But he was very sickly when he was still under formation, and many were actually losing hope, so he was sent home. But eventually he persevered, became a friar, a professed Franciscan, and ordained a priest. He didn't only become a priest, but he's quite popular. And I believe many of you must have heard of his name. His name is Saint Padre Pio. The man, the saint who popularized the saying, "Pray, hope, and don't worry." In today's second reading, which is taken from the first letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians, chapter 1, we have heard the apostle telling the early Christians and also reminding each and every one of us that God chose the weak to shame the strong. He chose the lowly to reduce to nothing those who are something. They are the chosen ones who became leaders. And actually, his original 12 disciples, except perhaps for Judas Iscariot, who was well educated, all the 11 will fail miserably in all psychological tests. And even as far as success in the world's eyes is concerned. But then they continued preaching the good news, and we have now more than 1.3 billion Catholics alone, Catholic Christians all over the world, and more in different Christians in different denominations. In the second letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians, the apostle has given us the reason why they persevered. Because, as St. Paul said, because it is when I am weak that I am strong. When he was weak, that he was strong. And what made him say this? Well, he also clarified this statement in his other letters, in his letter to the Galatians, when he said, and may each and every one of us also be able to say this, and should say this every single day in our lives, that it is no longer I who lives, but it is Christ who lives in me.